Hey guys, this is a market update. Without a big bit of news that can drive attention, we may be stuck in this consolidation for a bit. We've basically had a few big bits of news this cycle that have driven most of the price action. So I'm positive for the rest of this year. I think we still get a lot of positive news. It may be smaller though. It may be a little bit more often and smaller rather than those big bits of news we saw. Like Trump being elected was this move. The ETF was this whole move, right? You're not going to get those big events again, but you could get good regulation. Maybe interest rates come down a little bit, which may drive us into higher prices and all-time highs. I still think it's very positive. I'll show you loads of data and information about that in this video. So look, short term, we've tested this 90k level again and again and again. The more times you test a level, the weaker it gets, unfortunately. But to be fair, I think it's just choppy trading. Like testing the 90 level, always rejecting up into this kind of 95, 98 level. We've obviously been rejected from over 100 a few times. This tariff news dropped us, and new tariff news coming out isn't having any price effect again. So that narrative, it's just kind of fading away a little bit as well. The RSI is actually trying to put in a bottom here as well. I think we're just chopping and trading and waiting for the kind of next attention cycle within crypto, because it's definitely come out of crypto into other things at the moment. But I'm generally really positive. I think this is still pretty positive price action. I think the market's just taking a breather from what's happened. But yeah, still pretty positive for this year. If in doubt, I always go back to the long-term chart. We're not topping out yet. I'll show you on-chain data as well. So still long. I've still got some shorter-term trades on as well with very, very small leverage. But if you do trade, check out on Apex. This is Bybit's DEX. It's spun out of Bybit. You can get a permanent fee discount on there if you click the link below. And if you do trade on Bybit, $30,000 deposit bonus. Whatever you deposit, they'll give you a bonus there. If you can trade on Bybit, link down in the description as well. At this point in the last bull market, after 20% of the halving had been completed, Bitcoin basically started topping out for its entire bull market. We did have this second pump here, but if you look at the on-chain data at that point, it was crashing away. The real demand had completely disappeared, and the price is being risen on futures and leverage trading and Alameda and FTX trying to get out of their positions because the real demand wasn't there, but they didn't have any Bitcoin, right? So they were trying to pump prices up, and obviously that's going to fail at some point, and we crashed. Is that going to happen again? Have we topped out now? I don't think so. I don't think the halving has as much effect anymore. The real inflation rate is so low, and the demand is so big in terms of money coming in. I think we have to look more at fundamentals now rather than the halving. But you can see these previous two halvings didn't top out here, and I don't think we have now. It just doesn't feel like it. Realized cap, you can see great information here. 450 billion of fresh capital into the Bitcoin network drove the realized cap to 850 billion. Right, so that's almost a doubling. So the question is, do we get more fresh capital? And I believe so, right? You've got a bunch of state legislation in the US trying to bring Bitcoin onto their balance sheets. I'm assuming some of that passes. That's fresh capital coming in. You have nation states buying. Look at gold. It's just literally all-time high. So there is money to buy these types of assets. And I don't think this cycle is over at all, right? I think that's just playing out. And you can see that even with the tariff news and everything, yeah, we dropped, but we're almost at 100K again. So it just feels like that capital's still there. Bitcoin dominance still rising, which means alt season not yet. So you typically do have an alt season. If you look at the economic cycle, it does typically happen as people make money in bigger assets. It starts to filter down into smaller assets. So it just doesn't feel like the cycle is topping out at all, which means good news, right? It's remain bullish, remain long, like I said, and I've got some smaller leverage trades here, very low leverage, just because I think the price is going to move upwards this cycle, this year, and that means I just want to remain long and trade for prices rising. If we look at the macro data, everything actually looks really, really good for this bull market. There's just one thing that I don't know is this government expenditure cutting in the States. Is that going to actually make a difference? Because if it does, we're going to see inflation and GDP drop. They're two sides of the same coin. Basically in the States, government spending is GDP and inflation at this point. If you cut that out, GDP and inflation are going to go negative. Now that's good news, price is going down, but you have the economic system and the financial system. The financial system is debt placed upon assets at this price level. If the price level falls and the debt stays the same, that's when you have a massive financial crisis. I don't know if that's going to happen or if actually we're just going to have this slow and steady dropping down whilst we're getting new capital in from the private economy. We're seeing investment back in the States driving GDP higher, hopefully. I don't know which of those is going to happen. And so that's why I have 99% in spot. And if I ever trade on leverage, it's super, super low because I just don't want to lose my coins on a market shock that we come down 30, 40% and then go higher because the Fed's becoming more dovish again. I don't know which of those is going to happen. So I'm just prepared for either of those. Money supply, global M2 starting to inflect upwards. That's good news. More currency units valuing the same amount of Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up in price in those currency units. This is the Trump admin saying that they want 10-year yields lower. That's good news again. That frees up a lot of capital if yields come down on the long end, and that gives the Fed cover to cut on the short end as well. But again, yields will go lower if the government stops spending, but then that drags GDP and inflation, right? You can see the EU, look, huge recession. They need to stimulate. China needs to stimulate. And really, the US does need to inflate away some of its debt as well. Even though it's cutting from the government side, it needs massive investment from the private sector. Balanced budget is going to happen. So I'm telling you that when that happens, you will see inflation and GDP crater downwards, which is great news for the economy. But you have the economy with lower prices and the financial system with all this debt. So you have debt here and prices here. And then if you drop prices, the debt stays the same. And so your debt to GDP goes up. Even worse. So I'm worried about this. I just don't know what's going to happen. And so again, I just want to be able to weather a 50, 60% drawdown in BTC no matter what. I think that if that happens, the Fed will come in, but there's going to be a period of time where the market starts to sell off and get worried. So that's what I don't want to get caught out on. I don't know if that's going to happen or if we're just going to get coming down of spending and maybe some other investment driving GDP higher. I just don't know which one of those is going to happen. You can see that the deficit here is still absolutely massive. For the first 4 months of 2025, full year reports, 838 billion deficit. Absolutely insane. That's annualized at 2.5 trillion. So maybe I've got nothing to worry about. Maybe this spending is just going to continue, right? But you can see Doge here is cutting, $1 billion cut here, 100 million cut here. Maybe it makes some difference. They seem to be cutting a lot, but it's 2.5 trillion that they have to actually cut down to basically nothing in terms of their deficit. And if they do that, GDP and inflation absolutely crater, and the Fed is going to have to step in and print money again because the world needs a supply of new dollars for liquidity. Otherwise, you get a financial crisis. It could happen, so I'm just want to be aware of it. Other than that, maybe this bull market would just grind higher if this deficit is just obviously still happening. But we do get some potentially better rates because of the government spending, and hopefully the free market starts to invest with new credit creation, which drives prices higher, which would be the good outcome. Focusing on the good news, though, if we look at the business cycle, this is a post from Julian Battelle here. We are inflecting to the upside. So at the top of the business cycle, that's when you start to have to get a little bit worried maybe that things are a little bit overdone and maybe the Fed needs to draw down. They're nowhere near that right now, I don't think. So business cycle inflecting upwards is good news. And I know people want QE for alt season. Be careful what you wish for. If you look at QE, it happens after a crisis, right? So if you can see here, this is QE after the stock market absolutely dumps. Right here as well during the pandemic, huge dump, which obviously the Fed has to step in and recover. We don't really want that, to be totally honest. What we want is nice, steady dropping of rates because the government expenditure is being cut down. They're sorting out their balance sheet and their spending and their deficit, even just a little bit lower. And then the free market is coming in, maybe creating some credit. That's the perfect scenario. This is the perfect scenario if we just come up to the top end. We don't actually want QE because you have to go through extreme pain first. That's what I just am making sure that I don't get wrecked on if it does happen. But if you do trade crypto, check out Bybit, deposit bonus down in the description, and Apex fee discount. I think they're giving a deposit bonus right now as well. You can trade from your crypto wallet via that link. I'm James, this is MoneyZG. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.